Hey, this is Angela with this week's Living the Shift. How many times have you heard the term stay present, be in the moment, be in the now, stay in the now, anything like that? It started out, actually the big term, the use of that term started out with a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I think it came out like in around 2000 or whatever. I became conscious of it in the early 2000s because I was getting treated with cranial sacral therapy for migraines, for chronic migraines. And my cranial sacral therapist was holding a workshop on eliminating the pain body, eliminating our identification with the pain body, which is right from Eckhart Tolle's book. And I was fascinated. I was fascinated with the workshop, and it helped me a lot. And then I read the book afterwards, and I was pretty impressed. The funny part was I read it, 10 years ago, and or somewhere around there, and yet it's not until really these past 3 years that it really makes sense. And the more I go along on my spiritual journey, the more it makes sense to me. So the premise is this. When we look at it from the perspective of the ego and how wonderfully our ego has run this level of our consciousness in the 3D existence, we spend an inordinate amount of time projecting, expecting, fearing, having anxieties, having regrets about the past, saying I shoulda, coulda, woulda, or what if. Those are like the biggest things that take us out of the moment. And so what we do is, how much of our time do we actually spend not right here, right? We spend, next week, tomorrow, next month, next year, last year, 10 years ago, 10 years from now, where I want to go, we spend all of this time. And it's okay for us to set our goals and to decide on, to say, okay, this is where I want to go. But what about all the time we lose when we project, expect, fear, regret, put all that stuff in and put in all those what ifs and waste all of this time on those what ifs? They did some kind of research study that said that like 85% of what we worry about never happens. 85%. So think of how much we're wasting in energy by doing that. How much time do we waste worrying about the stuff that, all of the hot air that basically gets blown around in our political, institutions. and I'm not talking about the U.S. only. I'm talking about all over the world, and what all of this positioning's all about, and what people are talking, and instead of getting down to what the real meaning is and what is actually going to affect me and affect those around me, we spend all this time, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and and they argued, and now they're doing this, and that might happen, and then everybody spends all this time and wastes all this time, like how much work time they use or how much productivity they lose on talking about all this other stuff. Or what about this? Well, how am I going to get this done? Or what if this doesn't happen? And what if this does happen? And what if it does? But then you'll deal with it when it happens. How many times do you see in a movie or in a book, or how many times in our lives have we just dreaded something happening and it did happen, right? And say it did happen. Well, then what happens when it happens is we deal with it. We find a way to deal with it, and either we die and decide to transition out into another form and do it again, come back and recycle and do it again, or we move on, or we find a way to use it as a catalyst to move us to whatever next level we wanted to get to. That's what we put in our lives. That's part of this shifting. Part of our shifting is to realize that there is only the now. And if we step out of time and space, in reality, it's all instantaneous. So all lives, all dimensions, all timelines, all that kind of stuff, that's all right now anyway too. But if we get out of all that and just say, I am right here. There is this moment. And I am going to be in love with myself, with all around me. I am going to enjoy every single moment. I talked about this in one of my recent webcasts on how I was told that one of the gifts that I'm being given because I've been so driven throughout this whole existence is to be able to take the passenger seat. And it's sort of like, this double-edged sword, because it's like, okay, you can take the passenger seat and enjoy the ride and enjoy every moment and have fun with it and have an adventure with it. And the other thing, it's a lesson for me in saying that I can step in faith and step in trust that it's all going to work out in the highest and best way, in the way that I intend it to work out. And let it go. And when I do that, guess what? Then I can say, all right, I'm letting it go. I'm letting all those projections go. What happens, happens, and I'm right here. And then we enjoy ourselves so much more. You know, it was funny. I had a dream the other night. It was just a couple nights ago, too. And I'm really pretty good at this. I've gotten very good at letting go of many things and just surrendering myself to, I know it's going to turn out in the highest and best way, and I'm going to enjoy right now. And I trust. But in this particular dream, I think there was like one thing after another was sort of piling up, and I was worrying about one thing. I started it worrying about one thing, and then it turned into another thing, and then it turned into another thing, and then I'm like worrying, right? I'm starting to get stressed. And then all of a sudden the dream just stops. And it's sort of like on those silent movies where you'll see like a words come up on the screen. That's what happened. The dream just stopped and everything went black. And right across in this black screen in my mind, I see, don't worry. Enjoy every moment along the journey. And it was funny because after that, and it's sort of like it had to sort of impress itself into me. And after that, I went back to the dream. And I was like, wait a second. I started thinking about all this stuff and saying, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? And okay, so what? And okay, do I trust that this is going to work out? Yes, I do. Okay, now I have nothing to worry about. And then, oh my God, I woke up in such a great mood. And it stayed with me ever since. And I thought how funny is I had to do that, sort of like a fortune cookie statement in my mind to remind me to enjoy the moment. A great exercise. And this becomes more and more important because when we can do that, then our power of manifesting becomes so clear and it becomes so defined that we then even trust it more. So it's sort of like this whole self-fulfilling prophecy thing. If we trust that we've done it and we're doing it in the highest and best way and it happens that way, the next time we trust even more. So something we can do, and this is going to sound a little hokey, a little woo-woo, but it was recommended to me by a Tai Chi teacher that I was taking Tai Chi a while back, and I had already done this in a class that I had been in, but I had already done this by somebody else that I'd seen it somewhere and tried it, and that is actually what they call sharing energy with the tree, and it's gonna sound a little weird and think, oh my God, I'm gonna walk up to a tree and like share energy, like in what way, you know? But this is a really key thing to experience. Why do we feel better when we're out in nature? Did you ever think about that? Why is it we actually feel better when we walk amongst the wood, walk in the forest, or, just walk along where there are trees and ponds and plants and flowers and all that kind of stuff? Plants are all living beings. They all have a consciousness. And they are some of the most in the now consciousness you will ever experience. It is the most peaceful and calming and yet all connected kind of thing that I have ever experienced. And so what your homework is for this week is to find a tree, and if it's in your backyard or someplace where nobody's going to see you or whatever, take 10 or 15 minutes and find a tree, and an older one would be nice, like one that's at least got a trunk that's a couple of feet in diameter, and walk up to the tree and notice it. Clear your mind and just notice the tree. Look at the bark, look at the leaves and the branches, and then I want you to close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. I want you to center yourself, and then I want you from your heart, I want you to pay attention to the beating of your heart, and then I want you to feel the energy from your heart emanating out, and set the intention to connect heart to heart with that tree. And if you want, you can stand with your arms held out, sort of like about a foot around the tree without touching the tree actually, and then with the intention of sharing your energy with the tree and sharing the tree's energy with you, kind of thing. It's an exchange. And then just take some deep breaths and feel the tree. Feel what comes over you. Feel how it changes your perception. I have found that in doing that, trees, especially because they're big and their roots go deep, and they are so in the present, and yet they are so connected to everything. They're connected to the earth and the air and the water and all the other plants and everything around it. And yet there's no anticipation, there's no anxieties or fears. It's just in the moment. The consciousness is just in the moment, and it is so peaceful and joyful. And yet, if the tree needs something, you more times than not will feel it needing something. Like you will feel immediately if it needs water, if it needs something, if it's unhappy with something that's around it. But it's only in the moment. It's not saying, well, what if somebody puts a road that cuts through here and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't waste any energy on that. It just knows the right now. And that's part of why when we walk out in nature, we feel so much more calm, Because what happens is all of these plants and the trees, they all have auric fields, and we all walk through them and we share our energy with them. And when we do that, we get that calm serenity and that peace and that in the moment from the plants and the consciousness around us. And it's a perfect way for us to connect back again into the very moment. That's why we always feel so much more in the now, so much clearer after we spent a whole bunch of time in nature. So that's something to think about this week, is what can I let go of? How can I let go of these fears? How can I start to really just ground myself into the moment? And trying this thing with the tree, believe it or not, it's actually going to be helpful for you to sort of get an idea of how that feels. Because the first step is really learning how that feels, because I had a hardest time with that when I started working on that, because I was so caught up in everything, and part of my migraines had to do with this whole type A thing of keeping all my stress in my shoulders and neck, and all the stress is from worrying. And what's the worrying from? Projecting, expecting, and what ifs. So on that, I'm going to let you go. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. This is Angela with Living the Shift.